mean, it's part of my heritage, so I've said that. The reason why I always choose Islamic art is because it's part of me, it's part of my belief, it's part of my culture, and it's who I am every single day. I'm reminded of it every single day. It's not just Islamic art. It's, for me, when I do Islamic art, it's my Zen time, it's my zikr, that's my connection between me and God, and that's where I find my peace. So that's part of me every single day. So even when I've been busy at school all day and, you know, lots going on, or I'm with my children, when I come to my Islamic art, everything just calms. And I find that I just get drawn in and I switch off from everything else around me. So it's always been Islamic art for me. Assalamu alaikum, my name is Raanaz Shadid. I'm an artist. My family were originally from Pakistan, and I was born here in the UK. Islam and my heritage, my Pakistan influences have always been an inspiration to my work. That's where I get my passion for Arabic calligraphy and tehzeeb. So my themes are usually based on Islamic art. I travel to lots of different countries. I've been to Morocco, the Middle East, Turkey, and I like to collect lots of information. I explore the architecture, the geometry patterns always stand out to me. So those Islamic influences are always part of my work, and I just recently came back from Paris, where I discovered a beautiful mosque based on sort of like the North African Islamic art. So there was a lot of influence there. It's only a very small mosque, but the detail and the geometry patterns and the calligraphy have all been taken from places like Morocco or Tunisia. So it was lovely to see that influence within Europe and sort of hidden away in Paris. If you've never been, you should go because it's really beautiful. They have kept the tradition going, and sometimes you travel to different places and you can see the quality in those geometry patterns sort of are fading, but actually when you go to Paris, they've really thought about the detail and the traditional methods of creating these mosaic and zeilage patterns. And so when you go, you feel that you are in Morocco itself, and then you walk out and you're in Paris again. It's a lovely place to go to. So it's quite a long story actually. So when I was 9, 10 years old, and I was learning to read the Quran, and I really liked the way the calligraphy, the shapes that were formed when the letters were joined together using the Arabic alphabet. And I used to get told off when I used to have my Quran lessons. I used to kind of go in a daze because I would look at the patterns rather than reading it, and then I'd get told off. But that's kind of where it started really. And when I was about 12, I started high school. And my school, we went on a school trip and we learned how to do Arabic calligraphy for an afternoon. And that's where the passion started, because I had seen Arabic calligraphy for many years. I'd been reading the Quran, but I never realized that you can write it yourself. I didn't really think anything. I just thought it's a book that's been printed, and there was nothing in there that made me feel that I could write this myself. So this is the first time I was actually exposed to writing Arabic calligraphy and seeing somebody use the qalam and then create these amazing patterns that I was always mesmerized by seeing. So after I finished doing this workshop, I went home and I said to my dad, please can you get me some calligraphy pens because I really want to try this. So this is in the UK. So in the UK, there's lots of art shops, but he struggled to find the calligraphy pens that we use specifically for Arabic calligraphy. So 1 or 2 days went by and he said, I'm really struggling to find these, but there's another few shops, I'll go there tomorrow. So he said, why don't you just, for now, get 2 pencils. So he gave me 2 pencils and he sellotaped them together. And he said, just keep practicing with this for now. So I didn't know how to write. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know where to start from. But my father wrote my name and my brother's names and his name and my mum's name all in Arabic. And then I started playing and copying these words and just creating the letters. And then the next day my dad came home and he had some calligraphy pens for me, but he couldn't find anywhere he could buy them. So he went to the local garden centre and he bought the bamboo himself and the reed, and then he carved the pens for me himself. And then that's where my journey actually started. And I used to just practice all day long. And he actually was buying me so many sort of sketchbooks. In the end, he just bought me like lots of photocopy paper and said, just keep practicing and practicing. And so that's where it all of it started from for me, and my dad's sort of influence and making sure that I had the pens that I needed to practice with. Although I love to stay true to my traditional styles of Arabic calligraphy, I do like to explore a little bit more. So I do bring in sort of modern contemporary sort of feel to my work sometimes, where I just like to explore and be a bit more free with it. So I start doing a little bit of typography in there as well. And sometimes it might be just a quick swirl, but I'm just going to exaggerate it a little bit more, or I'm going to play around with it. So I like to mix, I like to do a bit of both actually. Sometimes when I do work for some clients, they actually prefer it to be a bit more modern. But then equally I have clients who want it really traditional, so I do both really. So there's been lots of different influences from different countries, looking at calligraphy. So when I was in Granada in Spain, Kufic was a script that really stood out to me, and Maghribi. So they've been a really big part of my journey. I've used those the most because they're although they're still difficult to write, they are easier than Thuluth. But then Thuluth is also something that I took from Turkey. So from the first time I ever went to Istanbul, many, many years ago, I visited the Blue Mosque. And when I went, all the Arabic calligraphy all the way around the Blue Mosque and Hagia Sophia, and I could just see this script everywhere. And so that's where my passion actually started. I wanted to explore it more, because then I kept seeing it in these beautiful places, and I kept thinking, oh, I would love to be able to write like that one day. So, yeah. The tools that I use in my Islamic art are really important to me. I've got specific tools that I use, and you get used to using them because they are what create your work for you when you're working. So like my burnishes, there's particular sizes that I prefer, there's particular ones that I prefer. When I'm using my silks, there's particular silks that I like to use. You know, from the years of being an Islamic artist I've been an Islamic artist my whole life. And so I'm used to certain things. So I've explored and experimented with so many different materials that I know what works and I know what I feel doesn't work. And sometimes I like to experiment and explore. So sometimes if I've got more time, then I will sort of change some of those materials and see how it works. But then ultimately, sometimes I come back to what I know best because I've been doing it for so long. But that doesn't mean that those things don't work. Those materials might be great and those tools might be great for you to use. Other people might find them very easy, but I've got specific ones that I prefer. And once I put a video on Instagram a long time ago, and I was using the most finest brush, but I was painting a piece that it was quite big. And somebody wrote a comment and said, why are you using such a small brush for such a large area? And it's just simply because that's what I prefer. That's all it is. It wasn't anything in particular, it's just I prefer to use the smaller brushes, really fine ones. It helps me go around all the little tiny details a little bit more, in more detail. But at the same time, using a bigger brush, I just prefer to use a smaller one. So, it's something so simple. It's not even something I'd ever thought about. I just always prefer to use a small one. So there's lots of important things, tools that I prefer to use, and especially like my burnishes as well. I like to use the tiger shell burnisher, but then I also have my agate burnishes as well. It depends what I'm doing as well at the same time. And sometimes something works better than something else, so then I have to swap and then I have to try something else. But then like when I do my Arabic calligraphy, one thing that Hoja Haji Nuruddin taught me was that when you use the ink, there was a particular type of ink that flows better, but also to mix it with Zamzam water. And before that, I was using rose water, and it still looked lovely. It still looked beautiful when you use the qalam and you use the ink. But when I started putting Zamzam water in, it was really strange. It wasn't very obvious, but I could feel the difference. And they're both two brilliant, liquids to use. One's rose water. Rose water is a beautiful liquid to use, but then you've also got Zamzam water, which just has that special connection to Mecca and, you know, to Saudi Arabia. So I started using that. So now I can't live without Zamzam water. I have Zamzam in my house all the time. I've got friends who, whenever I find out they're going to Saudi Arabia, they say, what would you like? I just say, can I just have one bottle of Zamzam water, please? And that's it. I will be happy with that. So I have lots of Zamzam in my house. I typically spend quite a long time, actually. Before I started working as a teacher, it was a little bit faster, but sometimes it depends how big or small the piece is. So sometimes it can take maybe 2-3 weeks, but sometimes it can take me like 7-8 months to finish a piece. So I'm currently working on some work for a client, and I've been working on them for nearly 2 years now. So yeah, but it's also because I started teaching, and so I have to kind of work around it. It's very different now that I've started working as well full time and teaching the skills that I've got. So I want to make sure that the artwork that I'm creating is still going to be the best quality it can be. So luckily my client understands that it's going to take time, but I'm nearly there. I've nearly finished it now. So some of the most important steps that I take when I'm starting any of my work is, first of all, I need to be calm and I need to be focused. And the way I do that is, first of all, say Bismillah, and then I begin. But with that, I have to then do sort of breathing exercises. So I practice first for about 10 minutes or so, 10-20 minutes. So whether I'm doing calligraphy or whether I'm doing tazib. If I'm doing calligraphy, I need to make sure that when I'm writing, make sure that my pen is sharp. So I have to recarve them, and then I have to test them out. So I use that time to just play around and get my muscle memory working again and making sure that my hand flows in the right way. And then if I'm doing tazib, I have to make sure that my brush strokes are as perfect as I can get them and are as smooth as I can get them. So then I practice with that as well. And it's not so easy because sometimes it can, depending on your body or what you're feeling that week, or if you're not feeling well, your hand can become quite shaky. So you have to then practice. So one thing I noticed was when I discovered I was having a baby, but I didn't realize, and my hand was really shaky and I couldn't understand why. And I'd been doing this for so long, and all of a sudden I thought, oh, I don't know what's wrong with me, I can't do this anymore. And my hand was just shaky for weeks and I just didn't understand. And then I found out I was having a baby. So, so many things are, get factored into why your hand, or, something that you're so passionate about and something that you do every single day, all of a sudden something's not working. So there's so many things that are involved in making sure that you create the best work that you can. So in that case, I had to stop for a while and I couldn't do any work for a while because my hand was just really shaky. And then once I was a bit better and I had, the right vitamins and things, then I was okay again. So all those things are the process to start on a piece of work that I begin to design. So because I do textiles, and that's what all my journey was about, was mixing Arabic calligraphy and Islamic art into my textiles. I use a lot of silk, different types of silk. So I use habatai silk, I use raw silk, and I sometimes use like silk velvet as well. But then equally I use paper, so handmade paper usually, which I have to burnish. So when I use the paper, it sort of takes a little bit more time in its own way, because I have to prepare the paper and make sure there's no bumps on it. So I have to make sure it's very smooth so that I can do the writing and I can do the tazib patterns on there so that the brush can sort of flow quite easily. But then when I'm using my silk, that takes time, because then I have to dye the fabric, then I have to let it dry, then I have to iron it out, then I have to stitch it together before I start doing any of the calligraphy on it. But it depends what I'm doing, because sometimes I don't need to stitch it together, but then sometimes I do. So it depends on what it is that I'm creating at the time. There's a few. There's no particular favourite one or unforgettable. I remember all of them. One was the Cambridge Mosque project. When they built the Cambridge Mosque, I was asked to make a piece for the mosque. So they wanted to do an exhibition, and they sold all the artwork. They got lots of artists together, and they sold all the artwork to raise funds to create the mosque, and a beautiful mosque. And the reason why that's special to me, out of nearly everything I've ever done, is because I didn't realize, but at the time, both of my masters also exhibited in the same exhibition. And I didn't realize that, and then now I've become a student of theirs. So that's one of the reasons why it's really important to me. I've got a connection with it. But then equally, there's other projects I've done which I've really enjoyed. Even simple things like, not even Arabic calligraphy, it's just been simple things like doing perfume bottles for Middle Eastern companies and brands, where I designed their perfume bottles and the packaging, and I hand painted them all, and I hand painted 100 of them. And they were all sort of like limited edition bottles. And that was a lovely project to work on. So it was something a bit different for me. But then equally again, I designed a range of silk scarves for a brand, where I designed sort of like Turkish sort of inspired art. And then the company had them printed and sold them as these luxury silk scarves. So each one of my projects that I've ever done have always been really important to me. That are presented in my artwork is that I'm Muslim. And my artwork that I create is about peace. And, you know, so much going on in the world. There's a lot of sort of upset, a lot of wars going on, and it's heartbreaking. And as a Muslim, we just want peace. And that's what it's about. That's what my artwork's about. That's what religion's about. That's nobody wants.